They say every child remembers the first time their love was ignored. Mine came wrapped in twine carved by hand, offered with quiet hope. She looked at it, smiled politely, and moved on. But when my sister gave her a glossy frame with a photo from years we all tried to survive, my mother cried. She wept like it was the first real love she'd ever known. That's when something inside me stopped asking. I'm Claire. And this isn't a story about revenge that screams. It's about the silence that grows when a daughter stops trying to be chosen. The kind of revenge that doesn't need witnesses, only the weight of a mother's absence finally felt in reverse. I drove down I-90 with the windows cracked open just enough to let in the dry autumn air. The silence inside the car was familiar, like background noise I had long accepted. Bellevue was only 30 minutes from my apartment in Capitol Hill, but the distance always felt longer on days like this. Mom's birthday. 56. I had taken the day off work, told my manager I needed a family reset. She didn't ask for details. No one ever does when you say the word family in that tone. I woke up early, skipped breakfast, wrapped the gift I'd been working on for 2 weeks. A cedar wood frame, hand-carved with a message etched into the bottom. For all the quiet things you did, it wasn't just a frame. It was hours in the workshop sanding until my fingers ached, choosing the stain, testing the engraving tool on scrap until the lettering came out clean. The words were mine, chosen carefully, no card needed. It wasn't flashy, but it was deeply personal. I wondered how long she'd look at it. I wondered if she'd get it. I parked outside her townhouse at 5:47 p.m., just ahead of the official start time. There were already cars lined up along the curb. Olivia's SUV was up front. Of course it was. I sat in the car longer than I should have, watching the porch light flicker on automatically. The gift sat on the passenger seat, wrapped in cream paper with a blue velvet ribbon. I stared at it, then at the house. Eventually, I got out, locked the door, and walked up the path. Before I could knock, the door swung open. Olivia's laugh spilled out, first high and bright. Then Mom's voice, full of energy. Claire, you made it. Look at you. She pulled me into a hug. I let her. One arm stayed around the frame, protecting it from the moment. Happy birthday, Mom. She looked down at the package and smiled politely. You didn't have to bring anything. You're always so thoughtful. Inside, the house looked like a catalog version of comfortable throw pillows with maple leaves, a candle labeled cinnamon woods burning on the mantel. There were balloons tied to the stair rail. A happy birthday Margaret banner strung across the living room wall in gold script letters. Music played from a Bluetooth speaker, some jazz pop playlist Olivia probably curated. Hey Claire, long time no see. Olivia wore a wine-colored dress and kitten heels. Her makeup was perfect in that effortless way, like she'd just walked out of a lifestyle ad. She gave me a side hug, then went back to arranging appetizers on the dining table. Yeah, been swamped with work, I said. Still at Rainhouse Creative, still. We just wrapped a campaign for a startup in Portland. She nodded like she was interested, but her eyes were already elsewhere. I set the gift down beside me on the couch and rubbed my hands together. They were dry from the cold. Guests started arriving. Mostly Mom's friends from church and her book club. A couple cousins. I smiled, nodded, answered the usual questions about work and city life. My voice sounded light and cheerful even to me. Dinner was pot roast, garlic, mashed potatoes, green beans. Olivia had made a fruit tart. I helped clear plates, loaded the dishwasher. I waited for the right moment to give her the gift. After dessert, people gathered in the living room. Olivia handed Mom a box wrapped in gold foil with a ribbon so perfect it looked machine-tied. I saw Mom's face light up before she even opened it. She peeled back the paper slowly. Inside was a large, professionally mounted photo frame. Silver trim glass cover. The photo was of us, me, Mom, Olivia, and Dad, from 2004. The Cannon Beach trip. I remembered the day clearly. Olivia had gotten stung by a jellyfish. Dad had worn that ridiculous Hawaiian shirt with parrots on it. Mom gasped, hand to her chest. Oh my God. Her eyes filled instantly. Her fingers traced the image as if it were fragile. Her voice broke when she spoke. You always remember the little things, Olivia. This means the world to me. Olivia smiled like it was nothing. Like it wasn't a masterstroke. I restored it, Mom. Look, they cleaned up the background too. Dad's face is clearer now. It's beautiful, you always know what I need. They hugged. Someone clapped, someone else toasted with wine. Mom held the frame like a newborn still wiping tears. I watched from the couch, hands folded in my lap. My gift sat on the kitchen counter now. Someone had moved it during cleanup. Still wrapped. Untouched. I stood quietly and walked over. "This is from me," I said, placing it in front of her. "Oh." She took it with a smile, opened it without ceremony. "That's beautiful. Did you make this?" "Yeah, I carved the frame myself." "Wow, that's really nice. You always were the artistic one." She set it down beside the napkin holder, smiled, then turned to someone behind her. "Thank you, Claire. You're so thoughtful." I returned to my seat. No one asked about the frame. No one passed it around or admired the details. No one read the words at the bottom. "For all the quiet things you did." They were there. They always had been. Later, when most people had left and the house had quieted down, I helped gather wine glasses. Olivia was scrolling through photos with Mom on the couch, their heads tilted together, laughing at old memories. I stacked plates in the sink, ran the faucet, rinsed each one in silence. My hands worked automatically. It wasn't jealousy, it wasn't rage, it was a kind of stillness that settled somewhere between ribs and spine. I don't think I wanted her to cry over my gift. Not like that. Not dramatically, not publicly. I just wanted her to pause. To notice. To look and really see me. Instead, there was silence. A polite thank you. The kind reserved for coworkers or neighbors. I had expected nothing. And somehow, I still left with less. I drove home that night with the radio off, letting the sound of tires on wet pavement keep me company. Bellevue faded behind me, its string-lit porches and manicured hedges swallowed by the dark. I didn't cry, I didn't curse. I just drove, the gift receipt still folded in my coat pocket even though I hadn't used it. At some point my mind drifted to the fall of 2020. The year Mom slipped on the back steps early October just after a rain. Olivia wasn't in town, she rarely was unless it was a major holiday. I had been working from home, taking conference calls from my kitchen table. I remember the ring of the phone, the panicked voice. I drove to her place in under 10 minutes. Found her on the floor inside, pale and shaken. She insisted she was fine, just a bruise. But her left knee had swollen and she couldn't get up without pain. I got her dressed gently, the way you would help a child or someone recovering from surgery. I wrapped her in her softest cardigan, the one she always wore on Sunday mornings, and took her to urgent care. We sat for 2 hours in the waiting room. I remember the nurse who recognized Mom from church. I remember the look she gave me when I corrected her for calling me Olivia. That night I stayed, made her tea, rubbed her back, set up pillows around her leg. I cooked oatmeal and added honey the way she used to make it when I was sick as a kid. She fell asleep with the remote still in her hand. At one point, half asleep, she reached out and touched my forehead with her palm. Then leaned forward, kissed me gently. "Thank you, sweetheart." That was the only time she called me that. Sweetheart. The word settled on my skin like dust, like something that didn't quite belong but wasn't unwelcome. The next morning, I made her scrambled eggs and sat with her while she read the paper. When Olivia called to check in, I stepped outside to give them privacy. I remember thinking, this is what being a daughter looks like. This is the thing I always hoped would be seen. But 2 weeks later, she was at a lunch with her book club. I happened to be there early, dropping off groceries. I heard her through the open kitchen window. "Olivia is so attentive," she said. "She always checks in, always remembers the little things. That girl is pure heart." I didn't hear my name once. I stood there, keys in hand, and wondered if some people's love only activates when they think of the ones who mirror them. It's funny. Olivia visits once or twice a month. She brings wine, takes photos, posts them with sweet captions. Mom beams in every shot. They have matching sweaters, inside jokes. A softness I can't replicate. When I visit, I change light bulbs, clean the gutters, fix her Wi-Fi. I show up early, stay late. I listen. I fill the space. But the room never stretches to fit me. I think the first time I noticed, it was in 3rd grade. Olivia had a spelling bee. Mom took off work, brought her flowers, even made a little sign. The whole thing was a family event. When I placed second in the county art contest a year later, I got a voicemail during recess. "Hi honey, congrats. Sorry, I can't make it. We'll celebrate later, okay?" We didn't. By high school, I stopped telling her about things. I got accepted into the design program at Western Washington. She said, "Oh, that's great." But when Olivia got into UW for pre-med, Mom cried. I mean, full-on sobbed. She called her sister. She baked a cake. Sometimes I wondered if I had been born first, maybe I would have gotten the soft version of her. The one with energy and awe and room to feel things fully. Maybe by the time I arrived, all of that was already spent. But that's not fair. I know. Some people just click better. Some daughters are songs you never get tired of singing. Others are echoes in a hallway you never fully enter. Last Christmas, Olivia gave her a bracelet engraved with a Bible verse. Mom showed it off for weeks, said it reminded her of how blessed she was. I had made a photo calendar customized with family pictures and important dates printed in. Mom thanked me, then later used it to prop up a wobbly chair. I wish I were exaggerating. The hard part isn't that Olivia is loved. She should be. She's good, she's kind, she texts Mom goodnight. She remembers birthdays. She knows how to frame things in a way that glows. The hard part is that I'm not seen. I don't even need the applause, I just need the lights on long enough to find my seat. At work I'm known. I get praised, assigned lead roles, given trust. With friends I'm the dependable one. The listener. The safe space. But at home in that house in Bellevue I'm a background character in someone else's narrative. Supportive. Useful. Replaceable. That night after Mom's birthday, I took the frame I had made out of its packaging. It was still sitting on my kitchen counter. I looked at the carving again. "For all the quiet things you did." I ran my finger along the edge. The wood was smooth, the lettering clean. It had taken hours. Maybe it wasn't meant for her after all. Maybe it was a gift to myself. I turned off the lights, went to bed without brushing my teeth. Laid awake in the dark, and thought about the difference between being loved and being chosen. They are not the same. Not even close. Understood. I'll now rewrite Chapter 3 with expanded detail, emotions, dialogue, and scene building to meet the 1,000-1,200 word target. It will pick up directly after the last sentence of Chapter 2 and maintain full continuity with the previous chapters. The next morning I woke up before my alarm. It was still dark outside the city, hushed the sky somewhere between blue and black. I sat up slowly, the air cold against my back. My eyes found the phone on my nightstand already glowing with the time. 7:56 a.m. I watched it like it might do something different today. 4 minutes later, the screen lit up. The words I'd typed years ago were still there. Call Mom. My thumb hovered. I could have turned it off and gone back to bed. But my body moved out of habit, not conviction. I hit dismiss, opened the call log, and tapped her name. She answered after 2 rings. "Hi, sweetie, you're up early." "Hey, Mom. Just heading into a meeting soon. Wanted to check on you." "Oh, I'm good. Slept late. Had some weird dreams about high school." "You ever dream about gym class?" "Not since I escaped it," I said, and she laughed. "Well, I made some oatmeal this morning. Blood pressure's steady. I checked it after coffee, just like I'm supposed to." "That's good. You taking your vitamins?" "Yup. Olivia reminded me last night. She's good about that." I paused, then swallowed it. "Sounds like you're in good hands." "I am. You girls are a blessing. Anyway, don't let me keep you. Work hard, but not too hard, okay? Will do. Talk tomorrow." We hung up. It was the kind of conversation you could script for a greeting card. No missteps, no heart, no memory. She probably wouldn't remember we spoke by lunch. I got ready in silence, pulled on a black turtleneck jeans boots. In the mirror, I looked competent. Clean. Invisible. Work was quiet that day. My team at Rainhouse Creative was busy drafting mock-ups for a sustainable fashion brand, but I stayed mostly behind the scenes. I answered emails, reviewed layouts, made edits. I didn't tell anyone I'd spent the weekend reliving a lifetime of being second place in my own family. At lunch, Naomi slid into the seat across from me with a sandwich and that look that said she could read right through me. "You've got storm face. It's just Monday, want to talk about it? Not really, okay? Want me to talk and you pretend to listen." "Yes," I said and meant it. She rambled about a disaster, Tinder date complete with poorly timed dad jokes and a pet snake named Vincent. I nodded, smiled where appropriate. But underneath it all, I felt a pressure building. By the time I got home that night, I was exhausted in the kind of way that seeps into your spine. I dropped my bag by the door, took off my shoes, and went straight to the kitchen. I wasn't hungry. I poured a glass of water, leaned against the counter, and stared at nothing. Dinner with the family was set for Wednesday. A small post-birthday dinner. Mom wanted to keep it simple. Just the three of us, plus Aunt Carol and Uncle Gene. I had offered to bring a salad, already regretting it. I knew how the night would go. But I still went. Carol made her usual lemon chicken. Olivia brought some artisanal bread she picked up from a bakery in Capitol Hill. I showed up 5 minutes early with a kale salad and pomegranate seeds because I knew Mom liked a little crunch. We sat at the dining table, Mom at the head, Olivia to her right, me to her left. The conversation was light, surface level. Carol asked about work. Olivia shared plans for a new skincare routine she was trying. I chewed quietly, smiled when prompted. Halfway through the meal, Mom dabbed her mouth with a napkin, set her fork down, and beamed. "So, guess what Olivia and I did today?" Olivia made a mock groan. "Mom." "No, I have to tell them. We booked a trip to Florida. Spring break. Key West. Just the two of us. Spa treatments, maybe some wine tours. I haven't been to the ocean in years." Carol clapped, delighted. "That sounds like heaven." "Claire probably can't come," Mom added. "She's always so busy." She said it so casually, like she was doing me a favor by assuming I wasn't invited. "Yeah," I said, nodding. "I'm pretty tied up next quarter." "Well, maybe next time," Carol said kindly. I smiled. The kind of smile that costs more than it looks. After dinner, I helped clear the table. Olivia stayed behind with Mom, showing her photos of the resort. I washed dishes. Aunt Carol joined me halfway through, handing me silverware and trying not to ask anything real. On the drive home, I replayed the words again. "Claire probably can't come." Not "do you want to join us?" Not "should we plan something together?" Just a decision made without me, about me. I got home late. The lights of my apartment blinked in soft amber from the hallway. I turned them on slowly, like noise might break something. My phone buzzed. A reminder for the next morning. 7:59 a.m. Call Mom. I looked at the screen for a long time. Then I opened the alarm app. Tapped into the label. Deleted the words. Hit remove. No sound. No confirmation. Just quiet. And in that quiet, something finally settled. The next morning, I woke up at 8:12. Sunlight slipped through the blinds. My phone stayed silent. No calls, no alarms. Just me breathing, still here. Still enough. The message came on a Thursday. I was still at my desk at Rain House, staring through my third cup of coffee when the screen lit up. It was from Mom. "If you want anything from the old house better, grab it this week. I'm handing the keys over on the 12th. No preface. No 'are you free this weekend?' or 'do you want help sorting through your things?' Just the facts, just the deadline." I stared at the text for a long time. Then I minimized my design window, pushed my chair back, and went to the break room to breathe. 2 days later, I made the drive. The house on 54th had changed. The grass was neater than it ever was when we lived there, probably for the realtor photos. The garden beds had been stripped of weeds. The porch was bare. No wind chimes, no overgrown planters, no chipped ceramic frog beside the door. Even the doorbell had been upgraded. I used the keypad. 0917. Dad's birthday. I wasn't sure if Mom had meant to leave it active for me or if she'd just forgotten to change it. The lock clicked. I stepped inside and let the door close behind me. The air smelled like new paint and lemon cleaner. Cold, sterile. Almost like a hotel room after someone's checked out. Boxes lined the hallway labeled in Mom's neat handwriting. Kitchen. Fragile. Hall closet. Linens. Carol's books. Donate. Each word so functional, so organized, like every memory could be sorted into stackable categories and labeled into submission. I walked upstairs. My old bedroom was mostly empty. The twin bed was gone. Only the desk and one shelf remained holding a few curled sketchbooks and a cardboard box labeled Claire, Misk. The closet door creaked when I opened it. Inside were things I hadn't seen in years. A third-place ribbon from the 8th grade art show. A chipped coffee mug with the words "Design is silence" made visible. A faded Seattle Mariners cap I'd forgotten Dad gave me when I was 9. I dug through the box. At the bottom was a cracked picture frame with no photo in it. The glass had long since shattered. I must have kept it out of obligation or habit, or because no one ever thought to throw it away. I sat on the floor holding the old ribbon in my hand. I remembered that afternoon so clearly. I had called Mom from the school payphone after I won. She didn't answer. I left a message, my voice high with excitement. Later that evening, she called back and said, "Oh, that's nice, honey. I didn't even know you were entering something. We should do something to celebrate." Then she never brought it up again. I set the ribbon aside, stood up, and went across the hall. Olivia's room still smelled faintly like her. Perfume and lavender. The vanity table she painted in high school sat by the window untouched. Boxes lined the wall, but hers were different. Neatly sealed, labeled with care. Olivia, photos. Olivia, journals. Olivia, keep. I opened the top drawer of the vanity and found a plastic folder. Inside was a letter. I recognized Mom's handwriting instantly. "Dear Olivia," when I saw the envelope from UW, my heart skipped. And when it said congratulations, I burst into tears. Not because I doubted you, but because I knew you were meant for something bright. You are the part of me I'm proudest of. Your strength, your kindness, your vision, they light up the people around you. You've always had it. Even as a little girl. I love you more than I can ever say. Mom, I held the letter with both hands, read it twice. It didn't hurt like a knife, it hurt like cold water. Shocking, but not new. Not surprising. I folded it carefully and slid it into my bag. Not to hide it. Not to steal something. I needed to remember what was said, and what was never said to me. I went back to my room. Scooped up the sketchbooks, the hat, the cracked frame. All the pieces I could carry. I didn't take the box. I didn't want it. Before leaving, I stood one last time in the doorway of my room. The sunlight was falling at an angle through the window, slicing across the carpet in a diagonal line. The walls were bare. No holes, no tape, no evidence anyone had ever tried to make the space their own. I pulled out my phone and texted Mom. "Finished packing." She replied 2 minutes later. "Thanks. Hope you kept what's important." I stared at the message. Then I slipped my phone into my coat pocket and walked down the stairs. The front door clicked shut behind me, the sound final. Outside, the wind had picked up. I zipped my jacket. Reached into my bag, touched the edge of the letter I had taken. Smooth. Uncreased. A sentence echoed in my head. "You are the part of me I'm proudest of." I had never heard that spoken to me. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away. Not fast, not angry, just steady, just sure. The drive home from the house felt longer than usual. The city was still waking up as I crossed the bridge, sunlight just beginning to stretch over Lake Washington. I passed the same coffee stand I used to stop at after high school orchestra practice. The same gas station Dad and I had fixed a flat tire at one night in the rain. I hadn't thought of that moment in years. By the time I reached my apartment, the weight in my chest had settled into something cold and quiet. I dropped the sketchbooks on my dining table, set the cracked trophy beside them, and pulled the letter from my coat pocket. I read it again. Each word landed the same way as before. Familiar, heavy, real. I kept the letter in my hands while I paced the apartment. It wasn't anger I felt, not disappointment either. It was something more surgical. Like finding a broken bone you didn't know you'd been walking on for years. I poured a glass of water, Saturday down on the couch. picked up my phone and opened her contact. My thumb hovered over the call button. I didn't have a script, no outline. Just one question that had lived inside me for too long. She answered quickly. Always did when I called at night. Hi honey, hey mom. You have a minute? Of course. What's going on? I hesitated, listening to the soft hum of her television in the background. She was watching one of those cooking shows again. The ones she only half followed but claimed to love. I wanted to ask you something. Okay. Do you think Olivia and I are different? She laughed gently, like it was obvious. Oh, of course you are. You've always been so different, but in good ways. How so? Well. She paused. Olivia's more sensitive. You know that. She's emotional. Things affect her deeply. She cries during Hallmark commercials. You've always been more even. More practical. So, because I'm not emotional, I don't need the same kind of attention. That's not what I said, Claire, but it kind of is, isn't it? She sighed. Not annoyed, but cautious. You're strong. You always have been. You were the one who got yourself dressed for kindergarten when I was still trying to convince Olivia not to wear Halloween costumes to school in February. You handled things. You just never asked for much. I was a child. I know. And maybe I leaned on that more than I should have. But I thought you liked being independent. I thought that's how you worked. It is. But liking it and having to be that way are two different things. She didn't answer. Do you remember the time I won that art contest in middle school? Of course. You got that ribbon. It's in your box, right? Yeah. Do you remember what you said to me? I don't. You said, remind me to get you something later, and then you never did. There was silence. Then a quiet exhale. Claire. I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. I didn't know if I believed her. I didn't know if it mattered anymore. She cleared her throat. You have to understand, Olivia always needed more. She was fragile. I had to pay closer attention. She broke easily. And I didn't number. You didn't. You held it together even when things fell apart, after your dad passed. I couldn't reach her for weeks. You, on the other hand, drove me to my appointments. You brought groceries. You kept things moving. That's not the same as not needing love. I know. Do you? She didn't respond. You know, it's funny, I said. I kept calling you every morning for 3 years. Same time. 8 a.m. Every single day. I know, sweetheart. I appreciated that. Did you notice when I stopped another silence? Number, I guess? I guess I just figured you were busy. Right, Claire. It's okay. I just needed to know. Know what? That it wasn't in my head, that I didn't imagine being the quiet one. The one you thanked but never praised. The one who helped but never got held. She breathed in through her nose. A sharp, careful sound. I love you. You know that, don't you? Yeah. But I don't think you love me the same way you love Olivia. That's not true. Maybe not. But it feels true. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel less. That was never my intention. I know. We sat in silence. I could hear the end credits music of her show playing in the background. A buzzer on her dryer went off. I should go fold laundry, she said. Okay, thanks for calling. I'm glad we talked. Yeah, me too. I love you, Claire. I know. I hung up. I stared at the phone, the screen still glowing with her name. Then I set it down and turned off the lamp beside me. There was no explosion. No resolution. But something inside me had finally gone quiet. The reaching stopped. The trying stopped. It wasn't peace, but it was mine. The shift didn't happen with a bang. It started with skipped replies. Then silences I no longer felt guilty about. I stopped checking the family group chat, muted it altogether. Notifications piled up like unopened mail. Photos of Olivia's dog in a pumpkin costume, Mom's new sunroom furniture, a forwarded recipe chain for crock-pot chili. I saw them, but they slid past me like static. I stopped calling. I stopped explaining why I stopped calling. I had spent years tethered to a version of daughterhood that only made sense from one angle. The moment I rotated the image, the illusion cracked. A week into the quiet, Olivia messaged me privately. "Hey, Mom's worried. You've been kind of distant." "Everything okay?" I typed, "Yeah. Just busy." Deleted it. Then wrote, "I'm fine." She replied with a heart. No follow-up, no phone call. Maybe that was her way of respecting space. Or maybe she was relieved not to dig deeper. At Rain House, I started arriving early. Not because I was eager, but because the office at 7:30 a.m. felt safe. Dim lights, empty halls, the quiet hum of heating vents. The rhythm of loneliness without the ache. Jason caught me staring at my screen one morning, not typing. "You're drifting," he said. I turned toward him. "What makes you say that you're here but not here? Like your body's clocked in but the rest of you's on a long lunch break." I almost laughed. "I'm not drifting. I just stepped out of a frame I never fit in." He blinked, processing. "That's a hell of a sentence." "It's been a hell of a few months." He didn't push. That's what I liked about him. Some people pry open locked doors. Jason just sat on the porch and waited to see if you'd let him in. That weekend, I cleaned my apartment like I was prepping it for someone else. I emptied drawers, sorted receipts, wiped shelves. No one ever noticed. In the hall closet was a bin-marked family. Inside, old Christmas cards, faded Polaroids, a broken snow globe from a trip to Portland when I was 8. The water inside had turned yellow. I took the contents out slowly, laid them across the floor. A timeline of moments I was meant to treasure. I picked up one photo, me in a blue dress at Olivia's high school graduation, holding the camera because Mom said she wanted Olivia's hands to be free for her diploma. I remembered smiling hard enough to cramp my cheeks. I put all the photos into a plain black storage box. No labels this time, no pretense. Just a single sticker I printed from my label maker. Not necessary. I didn't cry, I didn't even sigh. It felt more like clearing a browser history, removing things that weren't meant to be permanent. That night, Naomi came over. She brought 2 bottles of wine and hummus I didn't ask for. We sat on the floor, backs against the couch, legs stretched across the rug. Jazz played softly from my phone. She poured us both glasses and said, without looking at me, "You're different." Different how? Like someone who just got out of something. A long, quiet war. I sipped. "What makes you say that?" "You've got that post-siege look. Like someone who made it through but isn't quite sure what's left." We didn't talk for a while. The wine warmed the space between us. Then she said, "You look like someone who just lost their mom." I turned toward her. "I mean that in the emotional sense," she added. "Like you didn't lose her physically but realized she was never really yours. Not the way you hoped." I swallowed, then nodded. Maybe I never had her to begin with. She didn't argue. "Do you think that makes me cold?" I asked. "No," Naomi said. "I think it makes you honest." The next morning, I didn't check my phone. I went for a walk instead. Past the lake. Down to the coffee shop that opens early on Sundays. I ordered a cappuccino and sat by the window. Across from me, a woman my age helped her mother navigate the narrow aisle with a walker. She smiled, patient, nodding along to some story the older woman was telling. Their coffee order took a while and they laughed at the cashier's mistake. I watched them. Not with envy, just distance. I used to think scenes like that belonged to people who had done something to earn them. Now I knew better. Some connections bloom by design. Some don't. And some women spend 30 years learning that the absence of warmth does not make them unlovable. When I got home, I deleted the family group chat. Not the messages, just my access. It wasn't an announcement. Just a quiet exit. I left my phone on the counter, brewed tea, and watched the kettle steam like it had something to say, but chose not to. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything. Not a text. Not an apology. Not a change. The absence settled around me gently like a coat I hadn't worn in years but still fit just right. I didn't need to explain it, I didn't need to name it, but I knew this was mine too. 4th of July arrived like it always did, loud and bright and full of expectation. Olivia had started the morning early, posting a photo of her star-shaped cupcakes to the family group chat at 7:45 a.m. Each one was frosted in perfect rows of red, white, and blue. The caption read, "Patriotic Perfection." And the comments followed fast. Mom wrote, "You never fail to impress me." Uncle Dave replied with a thumbs up, and someone else dropped in a flag emoji. I didn't say anything, didn't need to. By 8:30, the chat was buzzing with updates about who was bringing what to the family picnic at Volunteer Park. Potato salad, deviled eggs. Olivia's kale slaw. Mom chimed in reminding everyone about sunscreen. Then Claire, are you bringing those lemon bars you made last year? I stared at the screen for a moment, then turned the phone face down on the counter. Walked away. Instead of baking, I pulled on hiking boots and packed a bag. I drove east toward the Cascades, winding past Fall City, then up through the dense green of North Bend. I picked a trail I hadn't walked before somewhere called Mason Lake. The climb wasn't steep, but steady, thick with switchbacks and wildflowers and the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring at first. I didn't think about the picnic as I climbed. I didn't think about Olivia or the lemon bars or the folding chairs set up in a circle on sun-baked grass. I thought about my breath. My calves. The way the trees curved overhead like a shelter not meant to hold anyone else. At the summit, I sat on a boulder and pulled out my phone. Took a photo of the lake below perfectly still under the afternoon sun. Then posted it to my story with a short caption. Sometimes distance is the lightest feeling of all. I didn't wait to see who viewed it. On the hike back down, my phone buzzed. A message in the group chat. Mom's name. One sentence, "Claire, are you not coming to the picnic today?" No question mark. No warmth. Just punctuation like a stop sign. I didn't reply. Back in Seattle, the streets were strangely quiet for a holiday. Most people were at the lake or up north. I drove home in golden silence. Made a sandwich. Stood at the counter to eat it while fireworks tests popped faintly in the distance. Then I walked to the desk in my bedroom and opened the bottom drawer. Inside was a box of white cards I hadn't touched in years. Thick, soft paper. The kind you save for weddings or condolences. I picked one and uncapped a pen. Wrote slowly. "Thank you for raising me. That's enough. You don't owe me anything. I don't owe you more." I signed it with my name. No greeting, no closing. I sealed the envelope, wrote her address in Bellevue by hand, then slid the card inside and pressed the flap down firmly. I walked it down to the blue mailbox on the corner just before the last pickup. It didn't feel like a statement, it felt like a period at the end of a sentence I'd been rewriting for years. Later that night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat near the window. The city was starting to celebrate now, fireworks bursting in bursts of color, distant whoops and cheers echoing off apartment walls. I didn't go outside. At 9:07 p.m., Olivia texted me directly. "Mom said you mailed her something." I stared at the screen. Then turned it off again. 10 minutes later, she tried again. She said you wrote "thank you." "Is everything okay?" I didn't respond. I sat with the silence, the kind I had chosen, the kind I controlled. Naomi called me around 9:30. She didn't ask if I was at the family picnic. She just said, "You want company?" "No," I said. "Not tonight." "You sure?" "Yeah. I just needed the absence to be mine for once." She paused, then said, "I get it." After we hung up, I opened my journal, something I hadn't written in since Dad died. I wrote one line. "This is the year I stopped asking to be seen." And somehow that was enough. The fireworks went on until nearly midnight, long after I'd gone to bed. I heard them through the window, pulsing bright, unnecessary. For once I didn't feel like I was missing out. I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. Not showing up wasn't rebellion. It wasn't anger, it was just relief. And for the first time in my life, I let that be the whole story. The next few days passed like a fog I didn't try to walk through. I went to work. I answered emails. I cleaned the coffee table twice in one afternoon just to feel like something was in order. Outside, summer was still happening, people biking in tank tops, lines forming at ice cream trucks, kids shrieking with sparklers after dark. I noticed it all like someone pressed up against a window. I didn't move to open it. The group chat went quiet. Or maybe I had stopped noticing. Either way, the silence didn't hurt. It hovered like a guest who had overstayed but finally fell asleep. Then Naomi texted. Did something happen with Olivia? I blinked at the screen. Not that I know of. Why? She called me. Said your mom's been weird. Snappy. Off. I didn't smile, but I felt something almost like confirmation. The silence I had chosen was no longer background noise. It had become loud enough for others to hear. That night I imagined what might have happened. The air inside the Bellevue house. The way tension creeps in, not through shouting but through what's unsaid. Olivia probably noticed first. She always did, though she rarely acted on it. Maybe this time was different. Maybe she was drying dishes or scrolling through her phone when she said, "Have you talked to Claire lately?" And Mom said too quickly, "She's busy. Always is." That's Claire. Maybe Olivia waited, then said, "She didn't come to the 4th of July picnic. She needed space. You know how she gets. Always dramatic." Is she though, or are you just not listening? A beat. Maybe Mom looked up defensive. What's that supposed to mean? It means you always say she's strong, like that explains everything. Like, that makes it okay to ignore her. She separates herself. It's what she does. No, Olivia said, her voice tight. It's what you pushed her to do. Silence. She used to call you every morning, Mom. She used to try. She's always been distant. No, Olivia said. She's been disappointed. And now she's just done. That's when I imagined the wall cracking. Not breaking. Just that first long fracture across a surface that had held too much weight for too long. Later that night, I saw the voicemail icon blinking. I let it sit for hours. I brushed my teeth. Folded laundry. Watered my peace lily even though it didn't need it. Then I sat on my bed, pulled the blanket around my knees, and pressed play. Her voice was quieter than usual. Hesitant. Like someone trying to find the edge of a story they never paid attention to. Hi, Claire. I'm not sure how to say this, but I feel like I'm losing you. Maybe I already have. I keep thinking about everything and I don't know what I did wrong. I want to understand. I want to try, but I don't know where to start. I don't even know what to ask. Then silence. Then the mechanical click that ends all messages. I didn't cry, I didn't save it out of nostalgia, I didn't replay it. I didn't send it to anyone. But I didn't delete it either. I labeled it the 9th of July, 10:42 p.m. and filed it away in my voicemail folder. Like a document. Like a timestamp. Proof that something had finally shifted. Not an apology. Not acknowledgement. But recognition. And recognition is where loss begins to look like truth. The next day, Olivia texted me. Mom left you a message. I know. She's been quiet. Kind of. Wrecked. I stared at the blinking cursor. Then typed, I'm not trying to hurt her. I know. We didn't text again that week. On Friday, Jason caught up with me at the office kitchen. He handed me a coffee even though I hadn't asked. You okay? He said. I'm fine. Naomi said you're not talking to your family. I'm just quiet. Sometimes quiet is a weapon, he said. Sometimes it's a shield. Sometimes, I replied, it's the only thing left when everything else gets ignored. He nodded. Then I hope it protects you. I carried my coffee back to my desk and didn't answer a single personal email all day. That weekend, I walked around Green Lake alone. People laughed. Couples took selfies. Kids fed ducks with crumpled bread. I kept my headphones in but didn't play music. I just walked, letting the lake loop remind me that some paths don't need to be straight. Some circles are intentional. I thought about that voicemail again. About how long it took her to admit she didn't know how to love me the way I needed. I wasn't angry, not anymore. But I was certain. She could only miss what she had never seen. And maybe, just maybe, she was starting to realize how much of me had gone unnoticed. Thanksgiving this year was quiet long before it was officially silent. In the days leading up, the world around me, filled with the predictable buzz, coworkers, confirming flights, neighbors, hauling turkeys and yams into their apartments, friends on social media posting side-by-side throwbacks of Childhood tables lined with canned cranberry and paper turkeys taped to fridge doors. I cleaned out my inbox. Unsubscribed from every newsletter with holiday cheer in the subject line. Turned off notifications for the family group chat. Set my phone to do not disturb but left the ringer on just in case Naomi or work needed something real. Olivia texted me 3 days before. Mom asked if you're coming to dinner. She's doing all the classics. I stared at the message long enough to know I wouldn't answer it. My silence wasn't out of spite, it was out of preservation. On Wednesday, a second message buzzed through. She bought sourdough just to make your stuffing. Mine, not her own. It was probably true, but the attempt at guilt didn't land. If anything, it deepened the line in the sand. Thursday morning, I didn't open my eyes until the sky had turned silver. I lay in bed for several minutes just watching the ceiling. No rush. No noise. No obligation. Eventually I made coffee, then set out to Trader Joe's just after 10. I didn't need much. 1 Cornish hen, a bag of red potatoes, Brussels sprouts, garlic, rosemary, 1 apple, and a small square of pecan pie. I added a bottle of Malbec and a fancy wedge of cheese just because I could. The cashier smiled too much. Hosting anyone? No, I said. Just me. Nice, she said in that awkward register people use when they don't know if you're lonely or free. By 3, my apartment smelled like garlic and thyme. The hen roasted in the oven, its skin-crisping lemon tucked inside, like a quiet promise. I peeled and boiled potatoes, sliced the apple, sautéed the sprouts. Set the table for 1 cloth napkin, silverware-lined water glass, wine glass candle. When I lit the wick, it flickered like something sacred. At 5:06 p.m., my phone buzzed. A photo from Olivia. The table in Bellevue. Mom at the head smiling, surrounded by plates of food. Olivia holding a glass mid-toast. And on the right side of the photo, my chair. Empty. Still pushed in. Still waiting. I held my phone for a beat. Then flipped it over, screen down, and ate. Each bite was slow, grounded, clean. The wine tasted sharper alone, but it cut through the salt just right. No television. No music. Just the hum of the radiator and the occasional drip from the kitchen faucet. I didn't speak. Didn't think much, just existed in the meal. At 5:27 p.m., another buzz. A new photo, same scene, same people, same table. No chair, they'd removed it. I didn't need to ask who. Olivia, probably. Maybe Mom. Maybe both. A collaborative erasure. Somewhere between the Brussels sprouts and the last sip of wine, I felt it. Not sadness, not grief. Validation. They weren't pretending anymore. They were saying it plainly, she's not here. She doesn't belong. And I agreed. Later that evening, Naomi called. How was dinner, she asked. I made it all myself, I said. I even used real napkins. Fancy. I didn't cry, I didn't expect you to. I paused. They moved the chair. Naomi didn't ask which chair, she knew. They finally got the picture, she said gently. Yeah. Or made their own version. After we hung up, I rinsed my plate, blew out the candle, and stood by the window watching fog creep up from the pavement. The city didn't sparkle. It just kept breathing, block by block, one apartment at a time. At 6:34 p.m. another text came in. Olivia. Why didn't you come? I left it unanswered. At 7:02 p.m. another. Mom kept checking the door. She looked for your car, I imagined it. Her hands on the back of my old chair. Her eyes darting toward the window. Olivia refilling her wine glass. She had every chance to ask herself why I wasn't there. And she'd come up with answers that didn't involve her. I added one last line to my journal before bed. Some absences are not voids, they are boundaries. The kitchen was clean, the table cleared, the apartment full of the scent of garlic and citrus and quiet choices. And in that stillness, in that deliberate solitude, I felt something unfamiliar. Not triumph, but integrity. There are meals we skip not because we're angry, but because we finally know the cost of performing. Of pretending. And this one, this missing chair, this silent room, this plate cleaned without conversation, was the most honest meal I'd had in years. This was mine, and it was enough. After Thanksgiving, the house went quiet. Not just mine. I think hers too. I didn't reach out. Neither did she. But something must have shifted. Because on the first Saturday of December, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I didn't pick up. I let it ring out. A few hours later, Naomi messaged, "I think your mom called me." From a landline. Asked if you were okay. I didn't reply to that either. Not because I was punishing anyone, but because silence had become honest. The next week, I got a card in the mail. No return address. Just my name printed in careful, neat handwriting. Inside was a single sentence: "I'm looking at old pictures. I never realized how far away you always stood." No signature. But I knew. I placed it on the counter next to my mug. It sat there for days untouched. One evening, I came home late from work and saw a figure through the frosted glass of the entry. Small. Still, I didn't move. Waited. Then a knock. I didn't answer. Another knock. Then her voice. "Claire, I don't expect you to open the door. I just need to say something." She paused. Maybe to check if I was actually home. "I thought you were the one who didn't need me." That's what I believed. But now I think. Maybe it was me. Maybe I was the one who stepped away. Another pause. I was so busy holding Olivia I didn't see who was standing outside the frame. "You always held the camera. Always took the pictures. That's why you're not in them." I stood behind the door still, not hiding. Just listening. "I don't know how to fix it. I just wanted you to know I'm looking. I'm trying to see what I missed." Her footsteps faded down the hall. I didn't watch her go. I didn't cry either. I just stood there. One hand on the doorknob. Not opening. Not locking. Just holding. And for the first time I didn't feel heavy. I didn't feel broken. I just felt released. She had come. She had spoken. But the weight didn't fall off me because she showed up. It fell off because I wasn't holding it anymore. Later that night, I took down the box from the top shelf of my closet, the one with the family photos, the ones I had labeled "not necessary." I flipped through them. Slowly. One by one. And she was right. I was always on the edge of the frame. Holding the camera. Blurry in the mirror. Reflected in windows barely. There wasn't one of her hugging me. Not like she hugged Olivia. Not forehead to cheek. Not arms around. And I realized for the first time that the absence wasn't just in the pictures. It had been in every room we ever shared. I closed the box. Didn't put it back yet, just left it open. Not as an invitation, but as a record. Sometimes what's missing says more than what's there. And now finally I had stopped waiting for her to fill those spaces. I could see them clearly. I could see myself clearly too. The next day I walked to Green Lake. The air was sharp and geese cut slow V's through the water. Families walked in twos and threes. Children raced each other on scooters. Couples held hands bundled in thick coats. I sat on a bench near the water and thought about her voice through the door. It hadn't broken me. It hadn't saved me either. It had just arrived too late to do either. A little boy ran past with a red balloon shouting about ducks. His mother followed behind him laughing, calling his name. He stopped, turned and ran back into her arms without thinking. She knelt to meet him. Held him like gravity. I watched the shape of that moment. And I knew what it was to grow up watching something like that from across the room. To be told you were strong, so capable while your sibling was the one curled against a shoulder. To be praised for independence you never asked for. I pulled out the letter again. Read it one more time. Folded it slowly, carefully, as if it might bruise. Then slid it into the journal I kept in my bag. It was not forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something else. A document. A beginning. Back home, I put the photos back in the box. I didn't seal it this time, just placed the lid loosely on top. If she ever asked to see them, I might let her. And if she didn't, I'd still know they were there. Visible. Undeniable. Finally mine. December came with frost on the windows and an inbox full of holiday promotions. Red and green bled into everything. Coffee, sleeves, ads, storefronts. Even the sidewalk chalk outside the yoga studio quoted carols now. At work, someone started a secret Santa list. I didn't sign up. I kept my head down and my headphones in. Moved through meetings like a whisper. No one pushed. Maybe they sensed I wasn't here for decorations this year. On the first Saturday of the month, I pulled the old wooden frame from the back of my closet. The one I had carved last year. The one she barely looked at. It still smelled faintly of cedar. I wiped the dust from the glass. Printed the same line again. For all the quiet things you did. This time I wrapped it with precision. No ribbon. No shimmer. Just plain brown paper and a white envelope tucked under the string. Inside the envelope I wrote, not to explain, not to accuse. Just to name the thing cleanly. Mom, you cried when Olivia gave you gold. You smiled politely when I gave you wood. That's fine, I see it now. Love like gifts isn't something you should have to compete for. If it only shines when it's wrapped loud, maybe it was never light. I'm not asking you to change, I'm just choosing to keep what's mine. Claire, I dropped it off at the post office on the 10th of December. Priority. Tracked. I didn't tell anyone. Not Naomi, not Jason. Not Olivia. I just sent it. Like setting a bird free knowing it might never return. On Christmas Eve, Olivia texted. She opened your gift. She didn't speak for a full minute. I said nothing. An hour later, then she cried. And she said your name out loud. First time I've heard her say it with tears. I stared at that text for a long time, then typed back. You okay, Olivia? Replied, I think you won. I didn't feel like a winner. I didn't feel victorious. But I did feel whole. Not loud. Not radiant. But full in a quiet, steady way. I made tea and sat by the window as snow started to fall. Streetlights caught each flake like confetti. I didn't call her. But I left my phone screen unlocked. Just in case she wanted to say something that wasn't too late. And if she didn't, that would be okay too. Some gifts are meant only to be given. And this was my last. Later that night, Naomi called. She was spending Christmas in Portland with her brother, and we exchanged 5 minutes of soft updates. How the rain hadn't let up all week. How the drive south had been surprisingly peaceful. Then she asked gently, how's your heart? I didn't know how to answer that. But I said, still beating. She laughed. You're good at turning pain into poetry. I'm just trying to call things what they are. That's harder than it sounds. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. After we hung up, I opened the envelope again. Read my words not as a daughter but as a narrator. The kind who walks through the wreckage of a house they didn't build but still had to live in. I didn't regret sending it. I didn't even regret waiting so long. I had needed the silence to understand how much of my life had been shaped by trying to be heard. Trying to earn. This time I didn't want to be earned. I just wanted to be free. On Christmas morning my phone stayed quiet. No group texts. No blurry photos of gifts or pies or the fireplace. Just one message. From Olivia. She kept the frame on the table. Didn't move it. No emoji, no further explanation. It was enough. I lit a candle and sat with my coffee in both hands, steam rising like breath. There were no ornaments in my apartment. No carols, no blinking lights, just the hum of something still and real. Outside, the city moved like it always does. Slowly, with intention. People bundled up and walked their dogs. Grocery bags swayed on mittened arms. Somewhere someone burned cinnamon. I breathed in. And let go. This wasn't a moment of reunion. There were no arms wrapping around me, no apology shouted from a doorway. But there was a frame. And a name said aloud. And a tear that for once didn't belong to me. Maybe that's what closure looks like. Not a door closing, but a room finally emptied of echoes. This was my last gift. And I had given it without needing anything back. By January, I had packed everything that mattered into 6 cardboard boxes and left Seattle with no announcement. The drive south was quiet, like slipping out of a conversation I was never meant to be part of. I moved to Mendocino, a sleepy coastal town on the northern California cliffs, where the fog was thicker than the gossip. And the sea always sounded like it was saying something important if you could just stay still long enough to listen. My apartment sat above a used bookstore that didn't carry anything published after 1998. The smell of old pages and ocean breeze seeped into everything. I kept the windows open even when it rained. No one knew me here. I didn't need them to. I fell into a rhythm. Up before dawn. A walk to the cliffs. Coffee slow dripped through cloth. Journal open but not demanding. No alarms, no reminders. The kind of silence that doesn't scare you, just holds you like a pair of open hands. I didn't call home. I didn't check the family group chat. I didn't send birthday cards or respond to the polite seasonal texts Olivia forwarded on our mother's behalf. I just stopped. And in that space, I could finally hear myself. Some mornings I wrote a line or two, sometimes just a word. Still, enough. Here. That was the most honest I had been with myself in years. The frame I had once carved sat on my windowsill, now facing inward. Not as a symbol, just as something I once made that asked for nothing back. One afternoon in March, a local woman named Eliza invited me to join her writing group. I said yes, not because I was ready to share, but because I was no longer afraid of being in the room. The group met every Sunday in the back of the bookstore. We didn't critique, just wrote and read aloud if we wanted. Some people cried, some people laughed. No one interrupted. One week I read a piece about my mother. About the way love had always arrived in her house like rain through cracks, unexpected, uncontrollable, and never quite where I needed it. Afterward, Eliza looked at me and said, "That's the kind of quiet that echoes." I think that's when I knew I didn't need to go back. I didn't need to explain. I didn't need to reopen the wound for someone else to decide whether or not it was valid. Olivia called in April. She sold the house, she said she wanted to start fresh. I didn't ask where she moved. I didn't ask how she felt. Olivia paused, then added, "She still keeps your frame by the bed. Reads the letters sometimes." She said she didn't understand until it was too late. I said understanding late is still better than never. She asked if I wanted to talk to her. I said I think I already did. The part of me that needed to speak already said what it had to say. There was no tension in that moment. No resentment. Just a gentle knowing. We hung up with kindness. And still I didn't go back. Instead, I went forward. I started painting again. Not for clients, not for galleries, just colors on canvas. Just texture. Just shape. Sometimes I didn't even sign them. I let them exist as they were unnamed, unclaimed. And one morning after a storm, I took a canvas down to the cliffs and let the wind lift it from my hands. Watched it tumble down the rocks and disappear into the surf. Not out of anger. Not out of grief. But because I could. That's what freedom looks like, I think. Not screaming your name into the void, but learning to walk away without needing an echo. I still get moments. Flashes. Memories. Her voice on the stairs. The smell of her old perfume. The hollow click of the front door not closing all the way. But they don't define me anymore. They just pass through. Like tide. Like weather. Like someone else's dream I used to try to make real. I go days now without thinking about what wasn't given. Weeks without needing to be proven right. And when I do think of her, I don't ache. I just recognize the shape of what I survived. That to me is healing. The absence of urgency. The release of debt. The choice to stay soft. Some nights I light a candle, sip tea, and sit in the quiet, not waiting, not wanting. Just being. And I remember the girl who waited by the phone. The girl who carved frames from wood and hoped her mother would cry. I want to tell her she made it. That the tears never came, but something better did. Her own reflection, not in anyone else's eyes, but in the way the world finally feels wide enough for her voice. So here's the truth. If you were ever the child they forgot. The one who brought home handmade gifts and got polite nods. The one who sat through dinners without questions directed your way. The one who watched love be performed for others like a show you were never cast in. Remember this. You are not invisible because they didn't see you. You are radiant in ways they never learned how to notice. You are whole even if no one framed you on their mantle. You are real, and you are enough. Sometimes disappearing at the right moment is the loudest story you can ever tell. And sometimes when they finally look back, you're already free. If this story found you in that silence, stay with it, not to dwell, but to witness your own echo. Because here you don't have to raise your hand to be counted. You already count. And you are not alone.